P2T Canine here. Welcome back and thank you for joining me for another Dog Talk. This week we're going to take on a discussion. I'm going to call the video Slaying Sacred Cows of Bite Work. Before we get started, let me go ahead and remind everyone that P2T Canine is an equipment company. We make top of the line equipment that you won't find anywhere else at better prices than other vendors on the internet. Please go on over to p2tcanine.com and check out the equipment offerings. Leave me a message or an email if you have anything specific you don't see there that you'd be interested in me making for you. I appreciate you doing that. So this week, talking about our dog talk in particular, slaying the sacred cows of bite work. As I've discussed in previous videos, normally between videos, it's travels, discussions, things that come up during my day job that I'm working between doing P2T canine endeavors and internet stuff, videos. And this is usually the source that drives my topic for the dog talk. And this week is no different. I want to discuss slaying these sacred cows, ideas and practices, and doing things the way they've always been done just for the sake of they've always been done that way. Let me go ahead and set the table. This is going to be the most important premise to this video, and if you don't listen to it with this in mind, with this at top of thought, then you can pick the video into 1,000 different pieces and shoot it down and pick it apart all you want to, but we have to bear one thing in mind. I am speaking specifically in terms of real world outcomes, actually using a dog for a law enforcement agency, for a military SOF deployment, or for a personal protection, real world outcome scenario. Not the training, not the hypothetical, the actual real world execution of a bite dog. So view it with that in mind specifically. Otherwise, none of the rest of this really matters. So with that being said, what am I basing this on? As usual, I will go back and reiterate, hit the high spots. Been doing this for almost 24 years now as a law enforcement officer, canine handler, deploying overseas, OIF 3 2005, multiple deployments to OEF Afghanistan, SOF MPC trainer for many, many years, in total a decade or better now. With that in mind, I am talking about real world outcomes. I have, at this point, when I was a law enforcement officer, our agency was doing 2 working dog seminars per year. We had a local training group that we participated in on our training day. Some of the bite scenarios that I'm going to cover, for instance, a dead prey sequence for me with a single dog is a 4-bite introduction per dog that we intro on that. So I have at this point decoyed for thousands of dogs. And if you talk about those thousands of dogs, where some of those are multi-bite sequences, I've taken bites from thousands of individual dogs in probably tens or hundreds of thousands of actual individual bites. So the body of work is very large. The test sample is quite large. Seminars all over the country. There for a period in 2008. All I did was advanced courses in the SOF MPC program. Me and another gentleman who is still an active trainer for the program spent an entire calendar year taking dogs from the basic course, running an advanced course, and putting them straight into one of the theaters of the GWOT. I probably have 25 or 26 of my own dogs that I picked, selected, did the advanced training that went straight into Afghanistan and OEF. Have touched during that 2008 period over 100 dogs, maybe more, that followed that exact same model, did the advanced course training, and they went immediately into a deployment, right up and including the week of Christmas 2008. 2008 was wall-to-wall advanced courses straight into deployment for these dog teams. So this is the body of work that I'm drawing on. I'll reference a couple of other items later as we get into it, but this is what I'm talking about. When people have said to me or in my presence, I have a system that is a proven developmental system for building a bite dog. Again, real world outcomes using a bite dog. Bite dog means biting people who are not decoys, who are not wearing protective equipment, and are not in a pre-planned training scenario. So until your dogs have left the pipeline of training that you are touting and gone out and broken skin on someone who is a legitimate righteous target for some reason, you don't have a bite system. All you have is a training system in the training realm or in the competition realm that look good on equipment, but until they have gone and proven themselves street worthy against an adversary out of equipment, you do not have a proven bite system, period, end. So with that being said, we need to look at some of the myths that go into what people are doing in developing these systems. Across this body of work, I have used all different kinds of suits, measured myself for my own suits, looked at bite equipment of every kind. One thing that keeps becoming a recurring theme in these is working dog programs versus the sport world or sporting programs. My wife has a very impressive body of work in her own right as far as canine goes. Air Force handler, 4 different certifications with 4 different dogs, and left the country on deployment with 4 different dogs, doing different things than SOF MPC, but still yet to qualify with those dogs, 4 different ones, and go on 4 different deployments is still a statement within itself. Also having done her own work doing e-collar training, pet training, service dog training, and a discussion she often has with me is looking at bite work and then referencing it in the DoD Lackland, which being a mainstream Air Force handler is where she got her training, versus what other programs are doing. And the biggest piece that is left out of that, and I circle back to the discussion of, people are always bringing up to me, working dog programs are better in this regard. The sport world is better in this regard. I have to hear it all the time about how the sport world has things figured out and how they're so much further ahead of working dog programs. This is the ultimate chicken and egg argument. Which one came first? Which one is more important than the other? I'm going to tell you that there is no daylight between the two. They are the same thing. There is not a working dog program that even has a puppy program developmental element to it that gets their bite dog started in any way different than any sport discipline that is out there right now. There are a couple of different trains of thought about when you start these dogs. Some European sport dog trainers start the dogs before their eyes are even open in the whelping box, start presenting small pieces of jute, letting them smell that, getting used to it while they're still in the whelping box, or immediately after their eyes are open, playing with little pieces of jute, the stick with a string and a piece of jute on it, pulling it through the whelping box. Immediately after they're out of the whelping box, having this prey made from the jute rag moving in front of them, teaching them to grab it, to possess it, to hold on to it. Some people vary insofar as when do you start that. There are some very successful trainers out there who don't do anything for the first full 12 months, the first year of the dog's life. They don't even put any kind of jute or towels or tugs out in front of them, and they start at 12 months, and they're also very successful. So I'm going to stipulate that the systems that people use are pretty much the same. The discussion and difference being at what stage of the dog, age-wise and developmentally, that they begin those pipelines. So right there in my experience, is the only only place where these programs really have a difference in how they begin. Now, we're talking about how that program moves through the pipeline and what the end state is. And now we're going to start getting into the discussion of where some of these sacred cows are that we're going to slay. And again, looking at real world outcomes. So, one of the first topics of the last 2 weeks that has really driven me to make a video on this and be passionate about it and speak on it at length is going to be grips and targeting, the bite placement. Again, there's really no daylight between the two programs, and I had to point out to my wife earlier this morning in a discussion prior to filming. She was talking about Lackland and her experience at the dog training school and the developing of her education in bite dogs, and says, well, this is different than the sport world. Go back and look at our dog talk with my good buddy Clay, who left the MPC program after multiple deployments and then went on to work in the consignment acquisition program at Lackland, getting these dogs from Europe. They are still going overseas and buying a lot of dogs that come through this pipeline in Europe. So even though Lackland doesn't really recognize it or give a lot of back briefing or education to the handlers on the sport side of it, their dogs are still coming from a sport pipeline and already know and have had a year and a half, 2 years, sometimes 3 years of background training, developmental baseline training in sport work before they are imported even to Lackland to go into the DoD program. So again, this is a very tricky chicken or egg discussion, and people like to pretend that there's a huge amount of difference between the two fundamentally when there really is not. There is a big difference with the outcome and which pipeline you follow and about what you're going to get at the end of that rainbow on the two sides, but not a lot of difference about how do you start them and what is the purpose. So with that being in mind, we've discussed using the jute, the playing, the tug toys, the rags, then moving to a tug toy, a bite pillow. Some of those have the loops on them. You start out holding the loops and catching the dog on it, having them work their grip, pull on it, possess it. Some guys start working the outs, some don't. Some of them are longer with the loops where you can step in the loop with your foot and then hold it up in front of your shin and start to show a dog a leg bite if it's a program that's going to use a suit. All of this is not in dispute. This is the way that you are going to start getting a dog used to looking at a person and then grabbing and biting and possessing in what later on we are going to put equipment on a person and have the dog grab the person and hold on to them and develop our bite dog and their bite skills. So we are taking a piece of inanimate material, putting some life into it with the tugging, the sticks with the ropes on them, moving it back and forth. Then we're going to take that piece of inanimate object, material, equipment, associate that with a person, and then eventually we're going to move into bite equipment that is worn by a decoy to get the dog to further develop this arc of training into the bite world. So with that being said, we have all kinds of different sleeves. There are puppy sleeves, training sleeves, the hard barrel sleeves with the big bite bar, the suits of different weights. But all of these at the end of the day are putting protection onto a human body in order to engage with these dogs and not take a tremendous amount of direct injury as the decoy. So years and years ago, a guy named Dondi Heydrich, who is a great trainer, knows a lot, quirky fellow. He's not for everybody, but the same argument could be made about me. Anyway, very knowledgeable. I like Dondi. We get along. Had no problems working together under the umbrella of the same program. Dondi wrote a paper. In this paper, he went through and he detailed most traditional bites and what are known as grips or targeting for dogs in most decoy work as it pertains to both the sport world and for working dog programs. And he went through and wrote this paper juxtaposing why this bite was good on the forearm, why the high arm bite, why the chest pocket bite, why the pocket of the knee, the back of the hamstring. And with each bite location, he went into the anatomy of this is what's back there. It's this nerve bundle. It's this connective tissue. It's this part of the circulatory system. This is what makes this bite good or devastating as a target. And he presented this paper to the program, and a great guy that I worked for at the time, the kennel master, the team sergeant, he brings me this paper and he says, read this. I think it's really good. Give me your thoughts on it. So I read it carefully, considered it, looked at it. Here's what I came to. Once you think about it, the human body is actually quite fragile, especially in comparison to other mammals in the animal kingdom that are suitable to outdoor living without clothing or shoes, footwear of any kind, headgear. We are actually quite fragile. My retort was, yeah, the paper is well written, but I could go and you could point to almost any place on the human body that a dog can bite, and I could make an argument as to why that's a devastating bite. The human body has a circulatory system that takes blood from your toenails to your fingernails to the tips of your ears to the top of your scalp. You have this system moving blood throughout the body in its entirety. You have connective tissues everywhere, ligaments, tendons, nerve bundles go all over the body. My immediate counter to this paper was anywhere a dog bites you on the human body could be classified as bad or damaging in this certain way because this is what's located there and these are the effects that would be observed after a good hard bite in almost any location. So I didn't want to be dismissive of the paper, but my counter argument was and still is the human body is fragile, and a good solid dog bite anywhere on your body is going to have some kind of deleterious effects on the body. And writing a paper saying this one is more devastating than that one, it's just kind of a waste of time. It's not something that needs to be documented or written. We know that when a dog bites you and breaks skin, that there's going to be a pain element, a pain compliance factor involved, some kind of damage, some kind of influence where now they are ready to take commands and be compliant, or they're going to have the divided attention task that we've discussed in the past, where now I've got to stop what I was going to do and deal with this dog because what the dog is doing hurts real bad. Stipulated. Now we're going to move into the targeting. I hear so much about, targeting, and grips. Years ago, I was approached by a guy I've known for a long time, did training with. He was not immediately in my area, but being another East Tennessee law enforcement handler, he was down around the Chattanooga area. He calls me up and he says, hey, the guys in my training group are telling me that my dog is biting shallow and it's not deep enough into the corners of the mouth and he's not driving all the way back to the molars, and they're trying to get me to do all of these exercises and all of this training that's going to make the dog bite fuller and go all the way to the molars and have this stronger, deeper grip, this better bite. And I said, okay, Steve, hold on. Let's analyze this for a second. Do you have any street engagements with your dog? Yes, he'd had several. Did your dog balk or hesitate on any of the bad guys that were a lawful, righteous use of force when you asked your dog to go and apply force to help control the situation and make the arrest? Did your dog step up and do it? Yes. What was your most recent bite? A guy was under a car. We couldn't see his hands. We couldn't put hands on him. He wouldn't come out, so I sent the dog. Did the dog bite? Yes. What did the bite look like? Well, it was more of half of the jaw, half of the mouth forward into the canines, and he grabbed the guy in the forearm. Did he exert enough pressure to break skin? Yes. Once the dog was on, did pain compliance factor into the scenario? Yes. Once we gave him lawful commands and the dog was on him, did he come out from under the car? Yes. Did the dog out on command? Yes. Were you able to take him into custody without further incident? All these were yes, yes, and yes. Steve, after the fact, did the suspect come to you and say, wow, your dog's bite was kind of shallow and I think you should work on the grip and it should have been more back at the molars and it would have been a more devastating bite? And he kind of laughs and he says, no, the guy had to go to the ER and he had the wound cleaned and a few stitches and had to get a dressing and have it all wrapped up. And I said, so where in the real world outcomes did the depth of the bite in this particular scenario fail you in the moment? Well, it didn't. And I said, exactly. So why do you need to go and chase this rabbit hole and try to engage in a bunch of exercises that you had no deficiency in the real world outcome resolving the situation? Your dog went into a confined space below a car, grabbed a guy by the arm, maintained the bite throughout all of the kerfuffle and follow-on commands and shouting and yelling that go on in a situation like this. Dog didn't break contact. You brought him out and you resolved the situation. Why do you need to go chase this deeper bite because someone says he's not all the way back on the molars in the grip? And he says, given that explanation, I don't think I have to. And I said, no, I don't think you do either. Until your dog is faced with a particular situation that has mitigating circumstances where your dog failed to engage, had a problem engaging, don't go chasing these exercises just for the sake of your dog needs a deeper grip or targeting. So let's go on and discuss targeting at a little more length. I want to phrase it correctly so that you get what I'm driving at. As far as targeting goes, who is best served by particular predictable targeting on the part of the dog? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? The decoy. The decoy is best served by targeting from the dog. Why is that? Because of the nature of the protective equipment that the decoy wears, what happens at certain parts on said protective equipment, and what that feels like to the recipient, the decoy, inside said equipment. Now, I'm going to bring this in together for just a second with people who get a lot of tattoos. In the tattoo subculture, what is considered a more low-end tattoo as far as placement goes, and what is considered a more extreme, experienced, high-level tattoo in that whole continuum? Those of you in the tattoo culture will know, some of you may not know as well. Where that is at is based on what's going to be more painful while you're in the chair. The most painful tattoos, so if you're at the bottom end and you're just getting into it, most tattoo artists are going to tell you go to a part of the body that has a large muscle group on it. The shoulder is popular, the bicep, the quad, the back of the calf. Why are these preferential on the low end of being a starter tattoo? Because there's a lot of meat there covering the nerve bundles and the bone, and it gives a bit of shock absorbing forgiveness between the needle of the tattoo and hitting the bone. What do we consider more high-end advanced tattoos, where when you sit down in the artist chair and say, ink me bro, they don't second guess you and say, are you up for this? The thinnest areas on the body, back of the hand, no meat, just skin where you're hitting the bone, top of the foot, elbows, knees, things where it's just the skin over top of connective tissue or nerve bundles or bone, and you really don't have anything back there to absorb any of that punishment coming from the needle. Now let's go back to placement. And is the placement for the betterment of the dog, or is it for the equipment and the person wearing it? It is for the equipment and the person wearing it. When we talk about the sleeve, the wife asserted this morning that most people use the sleeve out of laziness, and I do stipulate that that is correct. That's part of it. Programs, especially MPs, are very lazy about unlacing their boots, taking the time to get on the whole suit. The suit's hot, limits your mobility to a degree. They don't want to take the time to put it on. Once you take it off, you're very sweaty. If it's a hot day, you sweat even worse in the suit. If it's a cold day and you get extremely sweaty, you strip the suit and immediately you're getting the chills. I get it. It's a pain in the butt, but it is the best piece of equipment for teaching your dog real world outcomes that there is, because the entire body is in play and you can teach the dog to bite anywhere on the person without consideration to the orientation of the target, the decoy, as the dog approaches it. We'll get back to that in just a second. My number one reason, apart from laziness, that even trumps laziness for people using the bite sleeve is because it is painless. Most of these large barrel sleeves have a bite bar right out on the front. It's huge. It's easy for the dog to see. And I submitted to her, it covers the hand. The number one reason programs and people who gravitate towards the sleeve, it doesn't take as much confidence or competence as a decoy when your hand is completely covered and out of danger to plunk that big hard sleeve on there. And I even told her this morning, using the language of Whoopi, everybody likes to put on that big hard sleeve that has the grip handle inside of it. Their fingers are out of harm's way and they grab that handle and they feel good because that Whoopi's on there, and I know that this hand is protected and this dog has this huge bite bar where if the dog, no matter how deep they drive onto that bite bar, in a sleeve, the decoy feels nothing. No thing. In a traditional barrel sleeve with bite bar, all of that punishment goes into the equipment and you don't take any bruising, any contusions, no damage, no little pinch scabs where you get your meth crank bugs. None of that comes into play. They're very comfortable. The hand is protected. Bada boom, bada bing. Put me in the sleeve. For my own training pipeline, once the dog comes into a program that I am supervising, that I am training for, that dog will never see a hard sleeve again in its life, not ever. This is a giant obtuse albatross that you're wearing on your arm. If you keep targeting this over and over and over, if you run up to a real world engagement and the arms are turned away from the dog and the dog doesn't see the arms, this dog can balk. They can be, again, discussing last week back into our constant presence versus constant absence. If it's the constant presence of the sleeve, if that dog is looking for the arm and your bad guy is situated in a way where the arm is not immediately available, you can create problems with a decisive engagement with your dog if you're only on the sleeve training. As far as that placement goes, let me finish out on targeting. Always targeting right here in the middle of the forearm. Why do we want, not we, because I don't care. Why do programs want the dog targeting in the middle of the forearm? Well, as far as the sleeve goes, right about here at the bend of the elbow, that padding runs out, and until you fold the bite bar and close the gap at the elbow with the gauntlet of the upper arm, you've got exposure right here. And in fact, the straps that come down here and put new covers on the sleeve, you have a big hole right there. If the dog caught you snoozing or out of position and came over the top with your arm extended, they could get right in here on the lower end of the bicep and into the elbow joint, pretty easily on the top of a bite sleeve. So you want to shut it, bring those two pieces of protection together, and then you make this presentation. Well, to make the equipment work for you and provide protection to the decoy, your arm has to be like this, whether it's right or left arm, to close it. And now you are presenting a very particular target to the dog. It's very large. It's easy to see. Boom, they bite in here. Now, as it pertains to the suit, why do we want the dog on the forearm? Because the cuff ends right here at the wrist, and you are going to get a hand bite if the dog is going down, or you're sloppy, you're not confident or competent with your sleeve, your suit yet, and you don't want to keep your hand out here in the open. A lot of training groups you go to or seminars, if you put someone into a suit who's a little bit apprehensive about it and it's an oversized suit, what is the first thing that you see them do? They go ahead and they turtle those hands inside of that suit, and they get them inside the cuff because they want to try to simulate the safety of the bite sleeve by sucking their hands inside of that suit. What's wrong with that? Well, if we're using the bite suit to try to develop the dog's picture and make them more prepared for a real world outcome, you want the person to more align with the view of somebody on the street or on deployment that the dog's going to come into contact with. So if you move away from a sleeve to give the dog more options and the realism of a person they can bite anywhere, the minute you suck your hands in, you just took an element of that realism away. I've been at more than one seminar where I have almost lost my mind. And again, when DCM Consulting, retired Sergeant Major Dutch Moyer, and I went to Saudi Arabia and did an entire 12-week train up with Saudis on nothing but patrol dog for this program. And I went into a room, and one of these Saudis had pulled his arms all the way inside the suit top and had his arms crossed and was just standing in there flailing with his shoulders with these limp noodle arms of the suit, because he didn't want his hands out and he didn't like the bite pressure that he felt through the suit. So he sucked his arms in and was standing in there flopping the top around. Again, now you're just back to a tug toy of the dog's youth. If there is not something in there, bone and muscle underneath, added to the material for the dog to get used to the texture, you really haven't taught the dog anything if you're just standing in there with your arms sucked inside the suit. Wrong answer. Wrong answer all the time. As far as a chest bite goes, where does everyone want to teach the dog to target the chest bite? The pocket bite right up here. Why is that? Because in the suit, there's enough material that you can create a what? I'm listening for it. Bite bar, just like is on the hard sleeve. People will tell you, oh, there's a bite bar right here at the forearm. There's a bite bar back here behind the tricep. You can free up enough material in the chest pocket between the bicep and the pec to create a bite bar. What are the decoys who are doing these targeting exercises really trying to do? They're trying to put the dog on a portion of the suit that is safer for them, that has more padding, where when the dog targets and gets a full mouth grip, that the dog's mouth is full of material and not their muscle, bone, and skin taking the contusion and the bruising and taking damage from the engagement. Another bite, leg bites, calf, pocket of the knee, hamstring, even the inner quad. These are all areas where the dog can pick up material, and it is more comfortable for the decoy to take bites over and over on a repeated basis without soaking up too much damage. The elbow hurts terribly in a suit. There's no meat there. Once the dog gets on that, it's hard for them to get enough material to make a bite bar. And now their mouth is just full of your elbow, and they roll that thing back and forth, and it hurts like a mother. Done it plenty, been through it a whole lot. But people don't want them to target the elbow. Why? Is the elbow in reality, in real world outcomes, a bad location? No, no, it's not a bad location. So I'm going to put in a picture here of me at the VLK American Working Dog Olympics, where I was there competing with a 3-man team as a handler. And at one of my venues, a law enforcement handler that I know comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got a compatriot at my department who's getting ready to have to do his control sequence and out today for certification, and he's got massive problems with the out. Can you come and help me?" Sure, I'm on deck waiting. It's not my turn yet. I've got time to come and help him. During us working with a barrel sleeve on the ground and me with nothing and trying to assess this dog to see what can be done to try to get him through his certification, I'm standing there holding my clicker and my treats, and I turn, and I already knew from the beginning that this was moving south, but I wanted to help a bro, try to help this guy who was worried about certification. So I stuck with it anyway. But the more and more we did the click treat and the sleeve was on the ground and the dog saw and interacted with the sleeve, the dog started getting very aggressive, taking the food from my hand. He didn't bite me, but you could just feel the intensity coming up. And my spidey sense told me that this thing's probably going off the rails. But like the idiot that I am most of the time, I just continued along anyway. And this was viewed in person by a handler who's retired now, did his full 20 and got out, who was there as part of my 3-man team. Another MPC handler from a different group, and then an Air Force handler who is running Frequency K9 now, Ryan Troster, who is part of our 3-man team. And he's telling me the whole time, "I don't know, bro. This dog's got demons swirling in its eyes. This could be bad." I turn, and as I turn, my forearm was level to the ground holding the clicker. The dog comes off the ground, and this is one of those Malinois with a Rottweiler head with muscle ass on top of his head. He's got these 2 big meaty butt cheeks on top of the skull. And this guy had many real world outcomes, many street bites, goes to the molars on my left forearm and locks it down. Okay, this is bad. A lot of pressure. Was it devastating? No. Did I like it? No. But did it make me stop, lose all train of thought, quit what I was doing? No. So with a Green Beret and an Air Force handler that can be used to verify the events of the day, got the dog under the collar, and I picked all 4 feet up off the ground, and I turned to the handler and I said, "I need you to remain calm, but as quickly as possible, I want you to take this dog off strong, choke him off, and I need the cleanest, most perfect out that you've ever done, taking a dog off strong off of my forearm. I'm fine, you're fine, everybody's fine. What did I not want that dog to do? Shift down and get into the joint of the elbow, or shift up and get into the wrist." The handler did great. He was calm. He came up 10 and 2, got the collar up to the jaw, rolled his hands forward, went over his head. Dog chokes, mouth comes open, and I just rolled out nice and clean. Happy day. I was glad to be out of it, none the worse for wear. Go over, irrigate it, clean it, wrap it. Went ahead and ran my dog on the venue that we were waiting for. I ran the rest of the Olympics the next 2 days with a dressing on, traveled back to home station, and was back in the gym lifting on my regular schedule on the following Monday. It was not a devastating bite. It didn't take me out of commission, not even for the remainder of that day. I could feel it. It was sore. It was bruised. There was definitely some soreness when working the hand around and flexing all of the meat and connective tissues in the forearm, but it didn't stop me from doing anything. It didn't stop me in the moment, didn't stop me for a series of days afterwards. So when we talk about targeting, I'm going to elaborate on this. I'm building to a bigger point. Was that devastating? No, didn't like it. What would have been devastating is if that dog had moved into the wrist joint or into the elbow joint. So, my buddy Kelly Roby, B Squadron handler, GWAT handler, he ETS'd and was in charge of a program that was running training for a very high profile Navy program. We'll leave it at that. And he was supervising patrol training at night, and the dog that was running the scenario came through and bit Kelly and got him right at the elbow joint. It opened him up right below the joint, and you could see connective tissue in there, tendons and ligaments. This thing was bad. Much more painful than my forearm bite, much more debilitating in the moment, even though, because he's a hard ass ranger operator and just continued mission, it was much more intrusive into his life in the following days than my forearm bite. That being said, again, I'm talking about real world outcomes in targeting and grip exercises. His elbow bite caused him way more problems than my forearm bite. So what I'm driving home is the point that the targeting of certain bites is for the benefit of the decoy, not for the dog and not for the real world outcomes. And I'm going to continue to build upon that point. So if we were talking about a real world outcome, if I can take this dog and get bit in the forearm, and he is a serious dog and he went full mouth, got the pictures to prove it, take this dog off and continue my day and all of my days after that. And even in the moment, I could have carried that dog around. If I had a weapon and intended to do harm to that dog, it would have been very easy to do something fatal to that dog. He was locked on, targeted, center of the forearm, not an amount of pain that I couldn't deal with. I could have easily manipulated an edged weapon or a firearm and dispatched that dog and continued about my dastardly business. Does it feel like I'm getting ready to take a giant shit on protection dogs in the protection dog world? I'm getting there because it's included, because we're talking about real world outcomes. And one of my favorite things to do is take a giant dump on protection dogs. So with that being said, in the terms of the real world, is a hand bite a bad bite? No, not in the terms of a real world outcome. I guarantee you, even with my pain tolerance and my fitness level, that dog biting me in the middle of the forearm versus that dog biting me across the back of my four knuckles or having my fingers in its mouth would have an entirely different complexion. It would have had an entirely different complexion in the moment. I doubt I would have maintained my composure near as well as I did with that dog on my forearm. The pain would have been way more intense. The activities following the bite during that day, I probably would not have been able to continue the venue for the day, probably would not have been able to finish the week. Certainly doubt that I would have been back in the gym on Monday handling weights in the gym, doing my normal workout routine. It would have been a much longer protracted recovery that would have had much longer lasting issues. So in terms of a real world result, a hand bite will stop stuff way faster than a forearm bite. Real world outcomes, an elbow bite is horrible. That will make you lose composure and stop what you're doing faster than a forearm or a bicep bite or a hamstring bite or a calf bite. So when we start talking about, we need to get the dog up here on the table and start doing targeting exercises, for what? For whose purpose? If your dog needs targeting exercises, are you looking for real world outcomes, or are you looking to compete in some kind of sport-based arena? So even though I said in the beginning with the pipeline training, there's really not a dime's worth of difference or daylight between the way either of these programs would do the initial developmental phases of the bite training, But once you get out here into what is the purpose of the training, now we see that fork in the road where things really begin to split away from each other. So with that being said, I have been bit in the face 4 times during training. We'll go ahead and put a picture in here from Saudi Arabia. Showing where I was bit in the face. I was in a full suit, seated in a chair with a blanket over top of me, getting dogs to engage the body through the blanket on a target that they couldn't see. And I am responsible for my own safety. I'm trying to agitate the dog and juke him into a bite while I'm underneath the blanket. And the dog was confused and wasn't really picking up what I was putting down. But because I did a good job really aggravating this dog into convincing him that he wanted to bite me, as I leaned forward, he jumped over my knees and above the blanket and bit me in the mouth and lip right at the nose. Was I mad about it? No. I'm trying to teach a dog to bite. I'm as happy that he bit me in the face as I would have been if he bit me through the blanket and took a grip on the suit, because I was training for real world outcomes. There's no phooey, there's no bad dog, there's no admonishment or correction. When I am in the suit and I am training a dog, I am responsible for my own safety. If I am in a suit and I have made my entire body available as a target in a presentation that is as real world as possible, or to the extent that I'm trying to show the dog something to do in a real world outcome, safety's on me. I've been bit in the ankle, in the shoe, in the foot multiple times, in the hands a few times. The 4 face bites, luckily none of them were terrible. Every time I've been bit in the hand, I hate it. There's swelling, there's long-term effects, there's a protracted recovery. I hate hand bites. But if I get bit in the hand, then it's on me, because I'm supposed to be responsible for my own safety. A little sidetrack, it was that same 2008 that I referred to earlier, doing back-to-back advanced course training before guys went on deployment. I was on the ground doing my dead prey intro for dogs, and the dog was biting me in the tricep, but he didn't feel that serious to me. And as the dog pulled, I thought, well, I would normally never allow the dog to roll me out of position where I don't have my face defense ready to go in this scenario, but he just didn't feel super serious to me. I wasn't getting a real killer shark, bloodthirsty feedback. So to make the dog feel like he was gaining ground, I allowed him to roll me more onto my back, and I let him take me out of position. And once I rolled and opened my face up, it must be like the characters felt in the original Aliens movies where the face sucker's jumping at you. Because as I rolled out of position and I looked over my arm, all I could see was 4 canines and this dude's tonsils, and he was coming. As soon as he rolled me over and got my face exposed, he let off of the tricep and came right at my face. And I took all 4 canines, temple and cheekbone, right across the entire width of my face. Next thing that I'm aware of is the handler running in, phooey, phooey, phooey. It's like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Be quiet. No, 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 no. Once the dog bit the face, I was able to swim through Reggie White style, rest his soul, get him back on the arm, and then move to my knees, and we let the handler go ahead and take the dog off. And I had to go back and reiterate, because he had just graduated the basic course where guys are getting their sea legs and equipment, taking their first bites as a decoy in scenarios. And he sees me getting bit on the face and he's yelling phooey. And I said, look, we have just crossed into big boy territory. We are now in the advanced course. This is where rubber hits the road. You're getting ready to go into a theater of the GWAT in a matter of weeks. There is nothing the dog does when I'm in a suit and I am in role as the decoy that is wrong. The dog is never wrong once we are shaping real world outcomes. My safety is on me. I said, now if I'm bit in the face or the hands or the feet, I do want you to move in quickly and professionally and take this dog off hard, choke him off, not correcting. Want to make sure that between programs we're not overlapping terminology. There's no correcting, there's nothing harsh. We're just going to choke this dog off and take him away in drive off of one of these off equipment bites. But there is no verbal correction. There's no hint of anger or negative emotion towards this dog during this event whatsoever. We're just removing them from the bite. So with that being said, hey, when I'm on the ground, when I'm in here, it's on me. If I get into trouble, I'm going to tell you I'm in trouble. Just come and get him, and then we'll reset. So with that being in mind, targeting is for the decoy, not for the dog. Now, how does this marry up with how we want to view the protection dog? Protection dog programs are sold on the premise that this dog is your problem solver. Go look at any of a number of vendors where they show training scenarios that are meant to be a sales pitch to the buyer or prospective buyer of one of these dogs, and they're all pretty similar. Ladies in a broken down car, side of the road, desolate, nobody around. This rapey looking panel van with tinted windows pulls up, other side of the road, guy jumps out. What's our guy wearing in almost all of these videos? Because they want to make it look real world. A hidden sleeve in street clothes. He's got one big swollen arm. She says, "Fido, stop my attacker," as he's coming across the highway at her, or even comes over to her car. The dog leaps from the car, jumps out, and grabs our would-be attacker by the forearm on the hidden sleeve. And then the guy screams, "Oh, oh," and he drags the dog backwards towards the rape van. She outs the dog, calls him back to her, and our would-be attacker retreats and jumps into the rape wagon and speeds away, saving the day. Your $25,000+ protection dog is now your problem solver. I just outlined how that is completely false. Your dog has to know targeting to bite you in a hidden sleeve. If we're talking about real world outcomes and we're training a dog for real world outcomes and we want to stop a would-be attacker, would a giant forearm bite targeted perfectly in the middle all the way to the molars of this guy's forearm provide the real world outcome that you're looking for? Nope. And I've got multiple witnesses on that day that would tell you exactly that. You can take a forearm bite with a dog buried up to his molars, and you can just completely shrug that off and continue doing what you were going to do in the first place. And in my counter argument, makes it even easier for you to counter assault that dog with an edged weapon or a firearm if they have this nice targeted grip on your forearm all the way buried up to the molars and aren't moving around. So with that being said, again, more evidence that these protection dog programs and the training are not really geared for real world outcomes. This dog is setting itself up to fail you with the training that they are doing. If that dog gives them a good forearm bite, it's not going to stop a would-be attacker. They're not going to limp back to their van and jump in and speed away. If you had a well-trained large breed dog that was there, the guy would already calculate that and would either leave because they think that the presence of that dog is a bite deterrence, or even if your dog is a bite dog and they were there and were that determined of an attacker, go back and reference episode 1 of Dog Talks for the whole breakdown on why that it means nothing to a determined attacker unless you have a follow-on plan with other steps you are going to take in your own defense. So, with that being said, when we are developing a dog for real world outcomes, what are we doing? Always a suit. Everything is in play. Face and hands and feet exposed. Keeping your own safety in your own hands and giving the dog the most natural view of you possible as you go through these scenarios where the dog is targeting you and then applying a use of force. Now, once my dog learns all parts of the body, or a dog that I'm training, there is no more sport presentation where I am trying to do things and moving away to get a dog to bite a certain part of the body. The only moves I'm going to make are minor last minute adjustments just to protect hands, feet, and face. And I'm going to do it in a very casual way that would more mimic a street encounter than it would a sport decoy presentation. At my day job back in October, we did a bite demonstration and it had an official photographer present. And one of the pictures that was taken showed me on my butt hitting the ground with a pretty good look of discomfort on my face. Why did I have discomfort on my face? Because I was in a considerable amount of discomfort. Why was I in discomfort? Because this is an advanced dog with a lot of training and experience behind it, and I'm not going to continue backwards by making a sport presentation for my own comfort rather than just being casual and having this dog take a natural presentation of a person without doing something sporty for my own comfort and safety. So as I'm moving along, I'm just walking casually. I'm moving semi-laterally to the dog. He's off leash coming head on. I see him coming and he's looking chest the whole way. I could have easily done an arm presentation and come up and blocked the chest and taken a tricep bite, maybe even a bite bar at the lat. I could have signaled with the left arm to bring his eyes up and to the left and swept behind and tried to get him into the pocket. I just kept walking along, and at the last second, I just ducked my left hand behind my left thigh just so it was out of view, and the dog launches, and he bites completely over my left nipple on a thin part of the suit, which hurt like an MFer. And then as I allowed his momentum to be absorbed by me, I'm not taking a flop Hollywood style, but I'm going to absorb his energy, and we went to the ground. I got to go 10 years ago to a Franco Angelini bike course, and unfortunately he's retired now, but what an amazing teacher and an experience that was. But Franco Angelini style, I'm not going to absorb or jam the dog by making the energy just completely hit me and stay on my feet, but I'm going to pivot and swing a little bit and absorb that energy. As we went to the ground, the dog switched from this grip, because it's a very thin part of the suit, and bites right here at the top of the pants below the bib, which is again one of the thinnest parts of the suit, and he put another giant bruise on me here. I had lumps under my nipple for about 4 weeks following this demonstration. Bites here, and then as we roll to the ground, I just put a forearm on top of his muzzle to just push down and keep him from traveling further up and going underneath the coat top. And so I just put a little bit of downward pressure as we were on the ground and the handler closed in to take the dog off, just to keep him right there. Horribly uncomfortable bites, but would have made an excellent real world outcome. That would have been horribly painful and devastating to an attacker. Had you gone to the ground and the dog bit here, I promise you all nefarious intent that you had is completely out the window with a dog that close to your genitalia, whether you have an edged weapon or a gun or not, and then even trying to use an edged weapon or a gun that close to your genitalia, this becomes a shit show real quick. So these are the kinds of presentations that I make to a dog that is now in its advanced stages of learning. There is no targeting. Did he get a full mouth to the molars bite on that suit top? Of course not. There's not enough material there. Was it exceptionally painful with the front part of his mouth? Yes. Full mouth to the molars down here? No. Was it exceptionally painful? Yes. In the absence of equipment, would these two be horribly painful and get you into a state of pain compliance, of self-preservation, of stopping what you're doing? Yes. And in the terms of real world uses, whether it's a law enforcement agency or a soft element, there is going to be a person or a group of people present who have follow-on actions after this dog engagement that are going to control the situation, further allowing me the opportunity to take a big crap on protection dogs because they're selling you a one-step problem solver, which is not the case. And serious law enforcement agencies and military elements that are using these dogs don't send the dog as a problem solver. This is step one in a series of violent steps that are going to bring the scenario to resolution, not send the dog and then everything is all solved for you. So that's one of the themes that I keep coming back to. So the placement, the bite depth, the grip, if you are out there in an active duty soft capacity or a law enforcement agency right now and your dog is breaking skin and you're getting real world engagements, you're doing good. Don't let some fly-by-nighter come through and tell you you need to change what you're doing and do more presentation and targeting exercises or get a full mouth grip. If you are grabbing righteous bad guys in real world scenarios getting positive outcomes, you're fine. Keep doing what you're doing. They're not going to debrief you after the fact and say, you know what, your dog bit kind of shallow and you suck and it wasn't that bad. It's not going to happen. Now, let's talk about a couple of other things. We're going to insert a video here.
Why can't you call your dog off? Why can't you call him off? Why is he still licking his arm? You have no control of your dog whatsoever. Are you kidding me? I'm comfortable. You guys got 3 guys versus 1. You can't get the tag on?
That was recently posted on the X platform showing a guy who's having a real world good outcome but cannot get his dog off this bite after the fact. The person who is filming this on his cell phone, go back and reference the second video in the Dog Talk series where I highlight how cameras are everywhere and everyone has a 4K high-def camera on their cell phone. Ring doorbells, doorbell systems, surveillance systems, how cameras are everywhere these days. They're no longer cost prohibitive. And the guy doing the filming is asking a very, very relevant question. How come you can't get your dog off that bite? What's going on? Why can't you get your dog off of him? He's under control. So as you saw in that video clip, our perpetrator is on the ground, already in handcuffs. The dog has engaged. We have used the canine use of force to bring this situation to a resolution, and now he can't get this dog off. With that being said, I want to address all the agencies who say, I only have to out my dog once a year. Once I get my certification, I'm done for the next 12 months and I'll never out my dog again. Better rethink that. That is not the proper mental attitude to have. It's not healthy for your career or your department or your program. You want to talk about a straight line to getting your program nixed from your department and having no dogs ever again, or being saddled with a floppy-eared detection-only program. It's that attitude and what we just saw in that video. So if the defense attorney, which he most certainly will, get him a lawyer, gets a copy of this video, next thing he's going to do is go look at your department's SOPs for canine use of force. Then they're going to go look and see what kind of training records you have and what kind of certification you have. And they're going to put you on the witness stand, play that video for the jury. Then they're going to say, well, Officer Snuffy Smith, it says right here in your canine SOP that you must be able to successfully out your dog off of a bite. And now I have here this certificate dated 7 months ago that says you showed proficiency in that. And yet on this video, you show an astounding lack of proficiency in being able to get this dog off of a bite. What do you have to say for yourself? This is egregious. And the defense attorney is going to be right. Given the light of the facts and the video at hand, there is no getting out of any of those facts that we just presented. You're in a bad way. The department's in a bad way. This dude's getting paid. He will most certainly get a huge settlement from whatever agency is represented in the video. And this could be the end of the department's program writ large. Well, my chief is very pro canine and would never do that. Welcome to the age of risk averse behavior. Just like in Tennessee, where most agencies are in the TML risk pool, where you have this large coverage insurance for public municipal functions, for law enforcement agencies, for fire and EMS, if they have to pay out on something like this, it's not going to be up to the chief anymore. If it is up to the chief, so one of these risk mitigation pools that your agency is probably in is going to come to the head of the city or the county where you're at and say, if you don't eliminate the program, we're no longer going to cover you. They may push back and say, we're not eliminating the program. They will most certainly have their insurance canceled. They won't be part of that risk mitigation pool any longer. So there is a level of pressure that can be applied to your department administrator, to your head law enforcement official, to say you're going to get rid of this program. Don't think just because you have an administration that is pro canine that it will always be that, if you put them in a situation where other forces can be applied to them to make them change their mind. So what does this look like in real world terms? I want to take a moment to make a couple of other points. If you have experienced dogs that have successfully gone through advanced levels of training, if you have real world outcomes where you're getting good uses of canine force on legitimate righteous targets, unless you specifically have something happen during the course of a deployment of your dog, you don't need to be biting as often as you probably are right now. We're still training locally with law enforcement agencies through the day job in the area. Many of these sessions wind up having bite work in them where it's almost, as a lot of training groups fall into, and I even did before I knew any better, is biting for the sake of biting. We're going to throw a guy in a building. We're going to throw a guy in a car. Well, did you have a scenario lately where the dog balked or refused to jump in the car or pull the guy from the car? Was there a particular deficiency in the building, under the trailer, under a deck? Be specific. Unless you had a deployment that went badly and now you have to do some kind of remedial training to give the dog new understanding or new confidence in the scenario, now you're just loading up on bites and teaching a dog potentially bad information who really doesn't need it right now. If you are having good real world engagements and you're not having problems, your bite training should turn way, way down from the number of reps that are probably going into it right now. And the one thing that a lot of agencies probably aren't doing is practicing their out, getting good. And I don't mean stand up in the OB yard, Mickey Mouse choreographed control sequences. Now let's make this more real world and have a tactical tool for your toolkit. Let's go in and have a scenario-based building search with apprehension, and then let's go ahead and complete this circle by having a good verbal out and recall of that dog with cuffing officers, with cover officers in play, and put this guy into custody and take resolution of this scenario in full context while also reinforcing, yes, I have an actual out, because now you have a tool. And even if that guy in the video we referenced that was posted on X, even if he passed that stand-up, choreographed, old school control sequence and the dog verbally outed and did everything pretty, did it serve him any on the day that is in question where we showed the video? No. So he has a certificate where it showed him passing a control sequence and having a verbal out, but in actual real world outcomes, he had no out. And this dog was committed to the bite. And you can kind of see it on the officer with his demeanor, and look at how much he's sweating. Not only is he working hard physically against his dog, but he's probably sweating because he knows this guy's standing right there filming him, and he's pretty far up shit creek at this point. So with that being said, if you aren't using these in scenario-based training, really exercising that you have a practical real-world outcome out, then you don't have one, and it may fail you in the moment when you really need it. So don't put yourself into that situation. Practice these things. If you're not doing scenario-based, if you're doing scenario-based bite work, if you're doing that once a month, it also needs to include an out as part of that scenario. If you are not doing a lot of bite work, if you're getting real world outcomes and they are good, you can go down to basically 0 bites in the training arena. A lot of guys just like it because it's fun and it's high energy and high action, and it just seems like filler on a training day. And well, we've got a training day, so we got to do something anyhow. Just throwing it in there for the sake of is not good enough. So if you're throwing them in there, incorporate your outs into that. If you have turned your bites down to almost 0 because you're having good street encounters and you just don't need it, good on you. Do a scenario-based out at least once a quarter. Every 90 days, keep that in your dog's memory hole. Hey, we do have to do these, and I expect it to be in a real-world setting. Sometimes in low light, low visibility. Work with a good, confident, and competent decoy in a full suit who can protect himself in the event in this low light setting that the out doesn't go exactly according to plan. Have 2, 3 backup courses of action if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, but do practice it and do plan for it. Additionally, on the subject, while we're going down all of this, there was another point that I wanted to hit. Holy cow, we're at 1 hour and 10 minutes. I did wear my watch this time. Not going to go the full 2 hours like we did on the other one where I lost track of time, but I like to have a fulsome discussion, not a hit and run drive-by, really paint the picture and put a lot of meat on the bone behind what we're doing and the why of it. I'll probably go ahead and bring that in the light that we're probably around 60 minutes right now, but we'll go ahead and bring this in for a close. I can do a whole second video on this, probably another air. Leave it in there. No edits here. I could probably do another hour on the topic easily, but I don't want to keep you here. I appreciate it if you've watched it this far. Check me out. If you wade into the digital sewer that is Instagram, go over and check out the P2TK9 Instagram. Lots of interesting stuff going on over there all the time. Little updates, pictures, real world travels. Appreciate it if you'd give that a look. Like and subscribe to the video. Share it with a friend. Hope you got something out of it. If there's specific information that you're short on, email me, message on Instagram, YouTube comment. There's a million ways to get a hold of me. Appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time.